6 o'clock, we'll call to order tonight's Parking and Safety Committee meeting for August 20th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Keller?
Here.
Chairman Schaefer?
Here. Item 2 is approval of motion summary for the meeting held April 16th, 2018 is recorded and transcribed.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item 3 is time for public comments for anything that's not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here to speak to one of the agenda items, that'll come up later. But if you're here for something other than what's on tonight's agenda and you'd like to speak, this is the time for that. So does anybody have any comments that are not related to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, item 4 is an update and discussion on West Hall Drive.
Yeah, first I'd like to give an update on where we're at and how far we've come on the project. I think back in November, we got a complaint from some residents at West Hall Drive about the amount of cut-through traffic and going to the shopping center. We did a traffic study in that area and determined that there was a significant amount of traffic that was cutting through, going down Liberty, cutting over to Hall, and going into the shopping center. So since then, we've come up with a few alternatives for eliminating some of that traffic. One was delineators that are mountable and you can hit them. Another one was just completely eliminating left and right hand turns out of the access and only letting entrances into the U.S. properties. And then a third one is a median barrier from the dentist office all the way to US 23. So that's a little bit of brief history of the project and kind of where we're at right now.
Can you give us a little input into the pros and cons of those options?
So the median island from the dentist office to the US 23 is going to probably be the most expensive and most permanent solution. There's also, put it up.
Yeah. Okay, can you give me one?
Yes. The other options which we've showed you, which was eliminating the right and left hand turns coming out of the commercial property, that one is going to be less impactful and less costly to the residents, but it's probably going to impact US properties more than it would anybody else.
Because they'd be able to come in off Hall Drive, correct, go out,
but not go out. There was a third alternative we had where it was where they could not make left-hand turns, but they could make right-hand turns out, left-hand turns in, and right-hand turns in. So the left-hand turn movement would be eliminated only. So there was 3 different options we've looked at. The ranges is 115,000 to 15,000 is about the range depending on which option you choose. Obviously the one median island is about 500 feet long, and that's going to be the most expensive one. It's going to have mountable curb and it's permanent. You're going to have to remove pavement and those kind of things.
And how does that, having that median there, how does that impact the traffic?
Well, it's a physical object they have to drive over.
So it's a median that would prevent Hall Drive?
As far as people moving on Hall Drive or people turning into the shopping center?
Well, so once I get an idea of the median,
okay.
So the median is going to extend past the entrance of the shopping center.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the most expensive option and the most recent one we've come up with.
Okay.
The traffic counts, revealed about between 1,200 and 1,300 vehicles per day exiting the shopping center and turning left or westbound onto Hall Drive. That's a significant amount of traffic relative to the total traffic on the road. Probably maybe 25% or so of the traffic. So that was considered significant. That was the only, and I should back up, there was a working group formed and representatives are here back in November. We've worked with them, the staff meeting periodically to discuss a lot of the options and rule out the things that just weren't practical, like putting gates up the end of the road or closing off the road. But we did look at developing these alternatives as a means to try to reduce or impact some of that cut through traffic. So what we're really working on here is, as Nathan's pointing out, the concepts that would serve to try to reduce some of that traffic on West Hall Drive. Also, we should mention that we've all agreed that we should look at it as a pilot to whatever we put in initially, to do a lot of counts up front, put something in place, recount, and make sure that ultimately vehicles aren't just going to find a way, motorists, to redistribute their turning movements and still go on West Hull, or they're going to choose options like stay on 23 and maybe come down to 42 or Bell, or even go all the way up Pennsylvania Avenue to the new interchange there. So we wanted to pilot things. So obviously you'd probably want to spend the least amount of money while we're piloting, as a means just to see, can we effectively reduce some of the traffic on West Hull Drive, which was one of the major goals that we were trying to reach working with the committee. So we did, the least expensive alternative was just to make changes right at the shopping center exit, which prohibit a left turn out of the shopping center onto Hull Drive, force it right. And we had several attempts to work with the U.S. Properties Group, and I believe the representation is here tonight. But we didn't, in the time that we did work with them earlier this year, we weren't able to get a response back regarding specifically the changes right at the access point. So our plan B was, well, we can consider changes within the public right-of-way just to put the median across the entire access point, which we're not going to really impact their property, but we're going to start controlling traffic movements on Hull Drive itself, which was in our purview and our right-of-way. So that's where, as Nathan described, there's as simple as putting those flexible delineators down there for an amount of time to enforce the movements to the right and see how it impacts traffic. And if it looks positive results, consider a more permanent solution, which would be a median barrier.
And that barrier, there's no way to turn left in when you come down 23 north, turn left on Hall. You can't
turn back into the shopping center.
Right.
That's correct. The only movement you'd be able to make would be from Hull Drive going eastbound. You'd be able to turn to the shopping center there. You wouldn't be able to come in from 23 south. It would force people to use the main access way of the shopping center, which is signalized, which is where we really want to force most movements to be accessed.
No, if this ends up being the plan, obviously there's going to be a learning curve for the community for a while. So what's that impact do you think look like? You know, people are going to come in westbound on Hall, and they're going to say, "Oh man, I can't turn in here." They're going to go up someplace and turn around in driveways. And I mean, what do you envision would be the
probably use of portable message boards for a while to put the message out for at least a month ahead of time that access changes, use the main access point, then actually put them in. So that's the best way. When we make a significant change like that, we try to do as much advertisement as we can. We'd like to be able to put them further into the shopping center and notify people of the change, but that would require permission from U.S. Properties to be able to place
I just don't know how you
property.
handle it, but I feel bad for whoever's or the first two houses past that they're going to get constant people coming in and out the driveway.
It'd be right by Dr. Green's office.
Okay.
And he has requested specifically that we don't limit access in front of his commercial entranceway, and we agreed with that, of course. But yeah, you're right, that people will be doing U-turns, which aren't illegal on Hull Drive, to go around the delineators and go back. And hopefully the inconvenience of that, they'll remember next time to stay on 23 and use the main entranceway to go in. So there is a training and a retraining curve always associated with these.
Or people are just going to continue to go around that because it's the only way that makes sense for them to go home. Or we're forcing them out to make a left onto 23, which is probably worse than them going down Hull Drive to begin with.
Well, the left on 23 would be at the signalized intersection. Now, whether once people go out to 23, decide to go right and use Hawthorne, go left and stay on 23 and use 42 or Bell Avenue, Sandusky or Pennsylvania, or take a left turn across 23 back onto Hull Drive, we can only speculate what people will do. But to get that actual answer, piloting is really the only way to find out what traffic would really do, and would that have a significant impact on the amount of direct left turns from Hull Drive from the shopping center onto Hull Drive.
But if we restrict this, someone coming out of the shopping center will be forced to turn right onto Hull.
Yes.
Then they get up to 23 and they'd probably go left.
They could, which is a legal movement now. But I would, if it was me for the first time and I didn't expect that and I had to do that, I'm probably not going to do that again. Like Chris said, there's a learning curve, and trying to put advanced signage out there helps with that. Most people that probably frequent that shopping center, whether it's Walmart or Kroger, probably go there at least once a month. So we're hoping a month's worth of notification would help educate some of the folks that this is going to happen. It's not, there's no perfect way to do it, and you're right, in some situations, folks will get caught in that once that improvement is put in, even on a temporary basis for piloting. So that's why advanced notice is the best we can do, and then see how it works.
I guess what my major concern about it is, are there a lot of crashes on Hull Drive, or are there a lot of significant issues? Because what I'm worried about is we're fixing a problem by creating another problem that's going to actually impact traffic safety. This seems like this could have a potential traffic safety impact.
What I'll do is, in terms of the impact to the residents, we don't have high crash history. It's clearly the majority of traffic's cut through traffic on Hull Drive. And the speeding issue is marginal in terms of 85th percentile speeds that we can measure. But the residents who spent a lot of time with the homeowner association, they're here to speak tonight too on the issue, to give you a little flavor from their opinion, what they'd like to see, or at least what their concerns are. I understand all the traffic issues, which is why for the longest time we've not wanted to really monkey around with traffic on this because of those issues.
So we don't have a significant crash history.
On Hull Drive, no.
We don't have a speed issue.
Not outside, not a speeding issue of like people going 37 and 25. I think we're in the 30 to 31 mile per hour range on this road. 85th percentile speed that we talk in terms of, it's that typical range we see on most of our collectors. When we've had, a lot of traffic, we're in that same risk, that same area as probably another 30 or so roads in town.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions.
Anything else from staff?
No.
So I know someone from your group wants to speak. I assume
Yes.
someone's, so please just make sure you give us your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Jim Bauer. I live at 176 Hall Court, Delaware. David Haig, 180 Hall Court.
Would you pull the microphone?
Sure.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having us here to talk about this issue. This is an issue that's been going on since the subdivision was developed in 1996. It's sort of ironic we're meeting tonight because it's 1 year to the date since we first came to council chambers with this problem. And so we're pleased to be able to progress this far. I want to thank Bill and Nathan for the work that they have put in on this. They have spent a lot of time and we appreciate that. One thing that during the year we have met as a committee in the engineer's office, and that committee consisted of Bill and Nathan, the chiefs from the police and fire department, and representatives from our subdivision, the Wesleyan Woods subdivision, and Stratford Woods subdivision. That was put together, those three subdivisions, because obviously whatever happens on any of those three roads could impact another subdivision. A lot of things were thrown out. The consensus between the subdivisions, Wesleyan Woods and Stratford Woods, came out and said that we had the significant problem and could see where we needed some relief from the traffic, and they understood that. No, I will say no, we have not had crash history, but with that number of vehicles coming through, there is potential danger, and that danger is not between vehicles, it's crash and pedestrian. Almost on a daily basis, people try to cross the crosswalk, and a lot of close calls. It's just from the sheer volume of traffic going through a residential neighborhood. That is our concern. Yes, we understand that, for everything you do, there's going to be a reaction to that. As far as retraining the public, I think I'm only speaking for the other residents, but I think if we have to put up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months of people coming in, I live in the cul-de-sac, of people coming in, using the cul-de-sac to turn around and go out till they get retrained, I'm willing to put up with that over 20 years of what these residents have had to. I've only been in there 3 years. I was a police officer prior to that, so I've run plenty of traffic. I know what the problems are. And I ran radar and enforcement on that street. And I have seen it firsthand, and it's got worse since I retired. I just believe it's the situation with the new shopping center going in on 23, that amount of traffic is just going to increase due to the fact that we are the point of least resistance. We are the shortest passage that connects 23 and Liberty Road, and people take the path of least resistance. It's just human nature. That's what they're going to do. One thing that was brought up, I know, and I don't know where that stands, was possibly to help was curb bump outs. And Nathan, I don't know where we stand on that, or if that's something you want to address, or if that's just sort of a.
Sorry. Well, we've looked into it, and that's something the committee needs to consider how we move forward with those. If we get an engineer on board, if we those sort of things need to be considered as well, or other traffic calming measures that potentially could be of use.
And we understand that this is a pilot program, and that, you know, we agree with Bill that if it's implemented and it doesn't work, then, you know, we have to look some other way. But when we're taking 3,000 cars a day down a street that's less than a mile long of 61 homes, there is a significant problem. As far as Dr. Green, I talked to Dr. Green personally. Dr. Green is 100% behind this effort to curb traffic. He says it's affecting his business. He's afraid of his people coming out of the parking lot because there's just a steady stream of traffic. People are making left-hand turns. There's no crash reports, but I've gone down Hall Drive and had people exit the shopping center, make a left-hand turn right in front of me, and had to hit the brakes hard, leave skid marks to avoid crashing into those people. So yes, maybe there's no statistics as far as police reports. It doesn't mean that there aren't traffic problems and near collisions or injuries. So we are just trying to keep the quality of life up, or of living in our subdivision is no longer quiet when cars go rumbling through there. We got semi trucks going rumbling through there, everything. And it's just, how would I put it? It's just to the point where it's 3,000 cars now. When that shopping center opens up, it's just going to increase. We did go house to house, explain the issue to each one of the neighbors about the proposed changes. I'll let Dave, I just want to show you how many people are concerned about this. People from Ravine, if you just raise your hand. This is not something that just the two of us are saying there's a problem. This is a community effort here to change what is going on in this neighborhood. It's not just the two of us sitting up here saying, we want this changed. This is the community back behind us right now. We are 61 homes, and you got this many hands in your council chambers. And a lot more people would have liked to have been here, but because it's 6 o'clock and working, they're not able to make it. But Bill and Nathan had us go around with a survey. I'll let Dave explain what that was about.
Thank you, Jim.
I'd like to echo his sentiments as far as big thank you to Bill and Nathan and their staff as far as all the research and work that they've done in the past year, and as well as the traffic safety committee that was started in November by Bill. And this spring, Jim and I went door to door to every house in West Hull Drive and Hull Court, at least once to every home, and sometimes 2 or 3 home times if we were not able to catch them. And we went door to door to hand out ballots. We have the copies here that we were able to have all the residents sign. We received full support as far as the median strips and possible bump outs to put in to help with the volume issue that we have on our street. As Jim said, well over 3,000 cars per day now, only going to get worse. And so that's why we went door to door to talk to the residents. And they echoed the same sentiments that that we've been talking about here and also a year ago when we first came to this group, Parking and Safety, to talk about these issues. And we've reached out to them, and like you said, a number of them have taken their time to show up tonight to show their full support. And we know our representative, Jim Browning, he may be able to make it later tonight, but he did send a letter, I know, to your committee and expressing support as well to help with the volume, because we have so many cut through cars per day. So thank you.
Bill, how does that compare to other streets, 3,000 plus or minus cars a day on that stretch?
We have a lot of streets with that many, but we don't have streets that have just 60-some homes on it. It's clearly the volume traffic is heavy cut through on Hull Drive, on West Hull Drive. That's established. I don't think anyone disagrees with that fact. So if you live on a normal street with 60-some homes on it, you're going to see, a third of the traffic, maybe even less than that in an average day. So clear, and you can just track the traffic coming in and out of the shopping center. That's where the traffic's going to. So the road is serving the function that it was originally laid out for back in before any of that subdivision was built or even the shopping center was built. The negative impacts of that are the residents live on there. 2 out of 3 cars going by is someone passing through their neighborhood, not a trip originating in their neighborhood or ending in the neighborhood. So that's the reality of the situation right there. But there are residential streets in town that have that much traffic on it. In other neighborhoods, Bueller Drive comes to mind, Executive Drive comes to mind. The closer parts of those streets have that much traffic on it as well. The difference is there may be 800 homes or 1,000 homes behind there generating that traffic. Now, if you're standing out there, can you tell if it's a cut-through trip or not? I don't know. But clearly, these residents on this drive have they sense the difference between the traffic that knowingly belongs there and the traffic that's cutting through. I do want to make sure too that we have U.S. Properties is here tonight, whether they want to speak or not. I hear yes. So we may want to hear from them because this will be the first response we've had from them in this project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. One other quick question, Bill. As far as the pilot project, approximately how much time do you and Nathan think would you look at? 2, 3, 4 months for a pilot project?
Well, if we get to that point, the issue is just going to be the funding of the project. Would have to establish funding, get a recommendation from this committee to move forward, and then be able to fund that project. So whether that's something that would be supplemented in the current budget or have to be added to the 2019 appropriations ordinance, that would be yet to be determined.
Okay, and then you would look at the time frame.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Well, I'm assuming if this is a pilot project, we're not going to build that permanent median strip. We're going to do
Correct.
something.
Use flexible delineators similar to what maybe you see out by 36, 37 at 71, or even some of the yellow ones you see here in town. Spaced closely with appropriate signage to limit the movements or redirect the movements. Flexible, so if somebody accidentally drives into them, They don't permanently damage anything, or purposely drive through them. Either way, the marks will show up on the delineators if that's happening. But we can do that part relatively, I want to say inexpensively. You're probably still looking at, maybe $7,500 or so to buy even the least expensive delineators. Plus we have signage to put up and some striping.
Probably just give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, Rachel Spitzin. I'm counsel for U.S. Properties Group, the landowner of the shopping center. Address is 3665 Fishinger Boulevard, Columbus, or Hilliard, Ohio 43026. And here I have with me a couple of folks from Manic Smith who've had an opportunity to look at the traffic studies. First, I want to apologize for the lack of response. We've had some change in property management at that center, and so I apologize. It happened on a poor time.
Can you pull the mic a little bit closer?
Sorry, normally I'm quite loud enough. We've had an opportunity to review the information provided, and one of our first concerns is one of the proposals, the delineation, which would prevent people turning left off of Hall Drive into the center. That's really going to affect access to the urgent care. We think that's a really important part of the community. We were happy to bring them to the community, and we are concerned that that would make it more difficult for residents who are on their way to urgent care, and obviously in need of medical. A couple of our other concerns, if you reduce people turning left off the access road into Hall Drive, our concern is really that those people are just going to go out to one of the lighted intersections, either go up to Hall, turn left on Hall, which would not be prevented, or go down to Hawthorne and turn right on Hawthorne. So this kind of solution is really not going to affect overall the number of people going down Hall Drive. And that's something that should be reviewed and studied to have an understanding of how that actually changes. Our other concern is that the three proposals don't address the bigger problem of people going all the way down from 23 to Liberty on Hall Drive, and the use of striping, which is really shown to reduce speed, and the use of speed bumps as a deterrent for people making the entire trip, not just those who are coming from the shopping center. And we believe that a good number of those cars are people who have stopped at our shopping center, shopped at Kroger, shopped at Walmart, and are headed home. And it's not that they live far away, they live in the community, and that's they're making their evening shopping.
Doug Bender with Manic Smith Group. I guess I had a question from the two gentlemen that were up here, and possibly from Bill. Is speed truly one of the issues that we're concerned about here? Because it sounded like there's some concern from the residents that speed is a big part of that issue, but then there's an average speed of about 31 miles an hour. Is that right?
Well, we've had a number of studies of speed on there. Our most recent one, which is just earlier this year, or at the very beginning of our pilot study, when the residents saw the speed feedback signs, we're actually at 28, 29 mile per hour speed. So by our own traffic calming guidelines, anything that's 5 miles per hour within the speed limit is not really considered a speed issue. The primary issue is really the volume of traffic and how to reduce some of the volume of traffic from moving down the road. And that's where our counts at the shopping center entrance made the determination of just what percentage of that traffic is coming from the shopping center and going west on Hall Drive. So we're really talking a volume issue, not so much a speeding issue.
Is that the perspective from the residents, that speed is?
The speed is the problem. I
Okay.
mean, well,
Because the speed signs that give the feedback, that tends to force compliance. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily a true gauge of what people are truly driving on a daily basis. So
We've done many stealth speed where we have the device there
Okay.
that people don't know it's there.
okay, and you're getting similar results.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has there been any study of putting traffic calming devices throughout Hall Drive?
Again, we can put traffic calming devices. If we were seeing speeds of 35 miles per hour around there, that'd be very effective. But trying to reduce speeds from 29 miles per hour to 25, that's not effective anywhere. Traffic going 28, 29, 30 miles per hour is the background characteristic of speed in any neighborhood anywhere, and it's very difficult to make any impacts with that. So again, I'm not saying our devices clock people going 40 miles an hour, 50 miles per hour, but we work in 85th percentile. You gentlemen understand
Right.
that. For the benefit of the crowd who doesn't, 85th percentile speeds is standard in traffic engineering. We look at what is the speed that 85% of all traffic traveling through your neighborhood is going at or below. When we see that speed around 30 miles per hour or less on a 25 mile per hour road, it's characteristic of all traffic in all neighborhoods. So we say it doesn't have a speeding problem, but I'm not trying to diminish the fact that you see people going fast through there, because that's all accounted for in that analysis as well. But when the numbers come out to 85th percentile speed of 28, 29, 30 miles per hour, we can't characterize it as a high speeding issue. And that's just true for any neighborhood.
And so,
Can I say something on that? Is I believe speed is somewhat of a problem, but volume by far is the number one concern of the neighbors. Along then with the speeding, you feel like if you cut the volume down, you cut the speeding down.
because I guess our initial review, I think we see that, volume is an issue clearly that suggests plenty of cut through. 61 homes should be generating about 600 trips a day. So there's clearly a lot of cut through traffic going on. And so we understand your concern with speeding. We think there's some simpler solutions versus putting this in that would probably help you on speeding. And the concern we have is that putting this permanent solution in at a very high cost, it's not coming out anytime soon, but we're not sure how much of an effect it's really going to have on cut through for certain movements. Obviously, it doesn't allow the left out right there at the access drive. But when there's a signal right there and then a left turn, how effective is that going to be? So that's a concern that we see with the center, because access in is important at that specific location, not just for people going to the urgent care, but also our truck deliveries use that connection right there to get to the back of that building. And that's a major cost if we have to build up pavement to get trucks from the signals all the way back here. So there's that, and there's other considerations that we feel like maybe we come up with something else. And so left turn in possibly can work, and the interim temporary, we like that concept of checking it, doing some counts before and after, checking the crash history to see if northbound left gap accepting across the 23 southbound traffic is going to get to be more of a problem, because true access management, you try and protect the higher level route. In this case, by cutting this off, you're pushing the traffic out on the 23 to make the same movement, basically. So we see some concerns. There's some impact beyond just losing a little bit of access. There's the truck consideration. There's the time effect for the urgent care patrons. There's things like that we have concerns at. And we do want to work with you guys. We understand the residents' concern. They're not unfounded at all. We're just concerned that we've zoomed in on this one location and said that's going to fix it all. In fact, the amount of cut through suggests that, based on the volumes, that we do have some folks going to and from this neighborhood, but also other neighborhoods off Liberty that can still easily turn right in here with this arrangement. Those folks won't be stopped. And
The
so,
other thing is the pushing people down to Hawthorne. So if they are now going south on 23 and turning right on Hawthorne, you're just moving the problem from Hall Drive to another residential
But
street.
that is a boulevard. It's a larger access road than what ours is, and made to handle higher volumes of traffic.
And while I can appreciate that, I feel like there are other things that can be taken into consideration in reducing overall traffic on Hall Drive, not just shutting down this intersection.
Come to that conclusion, anything we can do to come to reduce the amount of traffic.
And those are some of the ideas
These
you
are
brought
Bill
up.
Nathan's suggestions. Okay.
You actually raised some of those issues with the speed humps and the other things, or not the speed humps, the traffic humps, and
You
trying
get
to
to talk to the
discourage.
microphone, you're being
Sorry.
recorded.
Sorry, trying to discourage overall traffic on Hull Drive.
I will say that speed humps are not desirable in your community, especially because you guys have to struggle with it the most. But essentially, if you do what's called a raised, bike crossing here, where it's a 4-foot or 5-foot wide thing, people have to slow down when it's a 6-inch raised piece of crossing. You could do raised intersection and maybe one more, so you don't have speed humps every 200 feet. However, it forces you to slow down at the location where you're encouraging pedestrians to cross and bicyclists to cross the street. to me, it's almost like a roundabout effect where people have to slow down where you normally have conflicts. So there can be some.
Address the safety forces on that.
Understand, I'm just saying, there are some ways to help improve the
Nice
safety
have a
out here,
problem
even
with
though there's volume.
recording.
It's gonna be more helpful
If you guys are gonna
We
banter
don't-
back and forth, we need to pull a chair up so we can get you recorded.
or I can
Sorry
move
about
another
that.
mic back there. If
Anyway.
you, I just.
Anyway, we're interested in working with you guys, and we see, obviously, you got some ideas, and we think some of those may be some good starters, but we're concerned about this one that you've kind of forwarded immediately for consideration, is just cutting that off, and so maybe there's some other interim solutions.
Well, there, just for the history, there are others, and those are the ones we first proposed to US Properties and got no response on. This, again, this is the first response. Our first least costly and one that provided the most ingress into US Properties was to simply prohibit exiting at that, allow full access in. So if you're coming off 23 or from Liberty on the whole drive, you can come in. So we respect the fact of the emergency care center there. We didn't want to reduce people being able to get in there. But using the shopping center exit point and using a higher order road with controlled signalization is certainly a principle that we'd like to follow in traffic, is get people to the higher order roads and let them move to lower order roads after that. So we maintain all access into the shopping center for all your tenants in there, and then just restrict those coming out to using the main signal and going north or south from there. So that was what we first proposed to US Properties and didn't get any response on.
And I apologize, I don't know if that's off the table completely now, but we'd love to have that conversation, especially with Manning Smith here, on that kind of pilot program.
Sorry, this is Randy Van Tilburg with Manning Smith. Actually a resident in Delaware. I live real close to this area, not in your subdivision, but real close. So very familiar with the cut throughs here, understand that it is a concern. We get it. And again, for whatever reasons, USPG wasn't responding earlier. She spoke to that. Now that we're here, we want to look at those options, and specifically the option you just brought up. I was going to bring that up, that's why I grabbed the mic. But is keeping access there is important. But if we can limit that left turn and that still works, I think we're willing to look at that.
And especially we give an opportunity to know what kind of effect that actually has on the traffic on Hall Drive and also on Hawthorne, to see if limiting that left turn actually reduces overall. And it's also the least permitted options if it doesn't actually work.
Right.
So I can't speak for the rest of the committee, but from my take on this, we've been talking about this for a long time. I don't want to come back a year from now and still be talking about this. If you all are willing to participate, I would recommend that we put the group together one more time, but
yeah.
I would like to see us make some decisions about this and do what we can. Speed, in our opinion, is not the issue, it's volume, and that's what we want to do something about. So if you want to be an active participant, that's great. We welcome that, but I'd like to get something done. So
I agree, 100%.
I just have a lingering concern. I'm one of the left turners onto Hull Drive, and I would feel guilty, except for it is a public road and it's doing what it's designed to do, which is move me from my home to the shopping center and back home. So it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. If I'm forced to go out to 23, I'm going to go out to 23 and turn left on Hull. And so my fear is that I'm not the only one who's going to figure out that if you force me out on 23, the fastest way home is still Hull Drive.
Right, and that's why we need to measure this, because I could bring 10 traffic engineers in, everyone's gonna give an opinion, but until we can actually do something that's the least invasive yet measurable, we can find out, is there a way to relocate this traffic on a different route? I too am a cut-through person, I'm sorry. But
Guilty.
if from where I live on the northwest side, if I was not to make that easy movement, I'm going to get on 23 and get off at the Pennsylvania exit now and go to my neighborhood in Lexington Glen, because that's going to be faster for me. So maybe I should be doing that today. But I think we can only predict these things, but we can't model exactly where these movements will go, which is why we want to work with US Properties up front. And I appreciate you being here tonight to try what we wanted to try at their access point, and not have to put delineators all down the road and retrain so many. It's a lot easier just to say right turn only, or no exit from this month to this month right here, as we work through that. And then we can get some very good measurable information to see what the impacts are long term.
I would be okay with trying that on a temporary basis, just to see what happens with the traffic. But I do understand the concern about limiting access there, limiting the left turn into there. And then the truck issue, I think, is also something that we need to take into consideration.
I also think it's also going to be a bigger picture when that Cochran's Cross that opens up too. That's going to be still,
Yeah.
I would say 6,000 cars going through there, you know?
So are you okay with reconvening this group with the idea that we're going to make some decisions in the near future?
I think I'd speak on behalf of the whole neighborhood that we would love to continue, but we do want to see an end point to the discussion and some action taken.
We appreciate U.S. Properties being involved.
Thanks.
Bill.
I'm going to give you my card, and I promise somebody from either myself or someone else will be at every meeting.
Okay.
Anything else?
He's racist. No, just mention he had his regular hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to finish my question. Do we have a time frame? Can we put a, it's been 1 year since we first approached.
so Bill, what,
Well, we'd like to meet yet in August with you.
Okay.
And then discuss what changes we can implement and see how quickly we can get those up. So I'd like to say within 3 months, we'd hope to be able to have something up we can be piloting.
thank you, everyone.
I would like to say something as a resident.
I need you to
Yeah,
come
come on
on
the
the
microphone.
name and address, please.
Bethany Davis, 297 West Hall Drive. It's about 5 houses in from Liberty. So I'm hearing the speed issue, that it's not an issue. I think all of us are kind of like churning a bit over here. What is the official when they have the speed and see your speed? What's that called?
It's a dynamic speed feedback sign.
Right. Okay. So that works really great for the first week. And then what I see is, because of how West Hall is laid out, is literally like a drag strip. Like people speed up just to see 55. Yes. And I think that really speaks to speed. I also think right by my house is a fire hydrant, and then understanding that there's no, so I'm a little nervous, understanding that there's no police reports on accidents. I have personally seen people go so fast they skip the curb and they've plowed into the fire hydrant, right where my kid would be riding her bike. And so for 11 years, I've had my kid, and she's never been allowed to ride her bike on the street because it's so dangerous. It's not just the speed and the volume, it's the kinds, the demographic and people coming through. Someone could just pull over and grab her and be at 23 and be gone. It's like we're pushing people into places where children are at. And I think another thing that that urgent care, that's pretty clever. That was good, but it's not an emergency room. I think it speaks, I know they talk to it, but the fact that they're not getting back until that left lane is restricted, I think that's interesting. I do think speed's an issue, and I understand averages. Has anybody else found that 50 miles? Easily?
People pass me.
Well, man, we have to go by the data that we have. We have to make decisions.
I'm looking at data right here that the last time you guys did the measurements, before the speeding, we had a stealth up, when the stealth was up, which nobody knew was there, your average speed was 29 miles an hour. When the machine went up, it dropped to 28.5 miles an hour. And then took the machine away and then put the hidden one up again, and it averaged up to be 29 miles an hour.
Average.
Average.
Right.
I mean,
So I think,
just for the record, Houck Road, 41 miles an hour. That's still average.
We understand that there's occasional exceptions to that, and we understand that you're concerned about it, and we understand why, but we're trying to decide what we're going to do about the traffic problem. We have to focus on volume, because that's what our data tells us is the problem.
well, part of this data here, which I agree, you have to go with data. If I'm reading this right, there were 132 cars that were going 36 to 40, 15 cars 41 to 45, and 2 cars 46 to 50 during the stealth. So I think as a non-city planner and a non-HOA member, I think what I'm trying to make sure that what is heard is more of a rounded, when you're actually living there, what you're experiencing. I think there's so many city council people who come through to get elected based on, we're going to help you with this issue. And being there for 11 years, I know we have endlessly talked about this issue. And as you said, this has been a year in. I really hope that instead of looking at the street as what's easy for you to cut through to go to the grocery store, we're all human, I understand. My dog almost died getting hit on that street. The neighbor's cat got clipped. There's accidents happening that are not measurable based on what your data's speed is. I mean, a kid's gonna get killed on that street. And then what? I think that's really what you have to think about.
Thank you.
May I say something?
My name is Lou Perotti. I'm with Ohio Health. I'm with their real estate department. And I'll admit from the outset that I'm woefully inadequate to actually address this subject because I've only learned about it in the past 4 days. But I just wanted to say on behalf of Ohio Health that we do run the urgent care that on your diagram up here. It's right next to the Chipotle restaurant. It's on the opposite side of that building. Our demographic draws, as you can appreciate, largely from the north. So that access to get into the shopping center is important. I think it is important to us because it's not intuitive to work your way back to that location if you go to the main entrance into the shopping center. And I think that we, again, like I said, I know this is an emotive issue. That's quite clear. I'm not here to debate the merits of any solution to that, just to make it clear that that is an important access for us. And if there's some scenario where it restricts access to take a left-hand turn out of there, that's obviously would be fine for us. That wouldn't be an issue at all. But it is important to our patients that we make our access intuitive and as easy as possible, because a lot of people who are coming to get to the urgent care obviously are hurting a little bit, and they need all the help they can get. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jill Shepard. I live at 309 West Hall, which is 3 houses in from Liberty. And, I really wish you guys would not use our street as a cut through. There are other streets you can use, or you can go out to 23 and get into the mall that way because there is a traffic light to go into the mall. But basically, I want to say that I am elderly. There are a lot of other elderly people on the street, and we like to go out and we like to walk, and we walk our dogs. We chat with each other. And the thing of it is that there is such a volume of traffic on the street that there is no place for us to cross other than if I would go from my house, the third one in there on Liberty, all the way up to the cul-de-sac and then come back. There are no other even crosswalks. There is a cutout in the sidewalk at Liberty to have painted strips, but there are none. It's very dangerous to try to cross that street in the morning, in the evening when it's rush hour, and the cars line up. So I am addressing the issue from the point of not the speeding, but the amount of cars that are there. And I understand that Ohio Health has a concern, but they are not a 24-hour facility. Their hours are very limited, and there are other roads that people can take to get into Ohio Health. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing, just to put emphasis on the
and we're gonna
traffic? Try to wrap this up. I know this is going longer. Jim Bauer again, 176 Hall. Just to give you an example of the traffic, and I realize some people maybe don't realize it. This happened last Friday. School bus was dropping off kids at the intersection of Hall Court and West Hall. School bus had to stop. I imagine they had a kindergartner or first grader on their bus that required a parent at the stop before they could release them. The bus was stopped, and I know because I was stopped at the stop sign waiting for them for 2 minutes. And this was at 3:30 in the afternoon.
It was stopped for 2 minutes. In that time, I counted on West Hall, go towards Liberty, and also West Hall going towards 23. There were 30 cars stacked up going what would be eastbound on Hall, and there were 20 cars behind the bus going the other way. That was in a matter of 2 minutes. You had 30 cars one direction, 20 cars the other direction, just to try to put some clarity to the amount of volume. When we're talking about 3,000 cars, please remember that is probably between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. with the other hours receiving very little traffic. I mean, it's no different than any other street, but at nighttime, it's a community. People are sleeping. It's not much. So that's how much traffic is going through that intersection in that short amount of time. I'm just saying that so you get a better understanding of the amount of traffic that can flow through that road in that short amount of time. I was amazed myself that in 2 minutes that many cars could get stacked up. So thank you.
And as we wrap this up, I just want to assure everybody that we understand, and I've been hearing about this ever since I've been on city council. We're not trying to put off finding a solution, but we're trying to find the best solution that we can. And I think it's important to have input from the businesses there. But we're giving you our word that we're going to keep moving ahead with this process and in a timely manner and come up with some solutions that work.
Just one other quick thing.
This is it, folks.
Yeah,
We're moving on.
yeah. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Dave Haig, 180 Hull Court. Two quick things. One, gentleman from U.S. Properties had mentioned, I believe, that you were looking for an immediate response. And Nathan McCoy from the engineer's office had reached out initially to your group 5 months ago and has not heard back at any. And I know you came in, you apologize tonight, but it's been 5 months, okay, that he first reached out to you. And second, the city of Delaware 22 years ago mandated that there be a cut through when Ravines at Stratford was put in from Liberty, which there was not at the time. And second, they mandated that there be a cut through put in to Delaware Community Plaza. So I'm just reiterating that this problem of the cut through was started by the city of Delaware. Okay, so I just want to emphasize and thank you again very much for your time.
Item number 5 is discussion and consideration of the installation of a no parking signage on Richardson Street from Hayes to the alley between Richardson and Cheshire. You want to wait a second, Chief?
Yeah, I'll give it a minute.
Raise up by yourself.
We'll move up in the
Okay, well, I'm the only one here.
Wait just a minute, I think the chief's got.
This has been on the agenda previously. The fire chief was not here last time, so I think it was pushed to this meeting, but this is concerning the issue of Richardson Drive. The parking on that street is on both sides of the street. We've eliminated, hopefully, a problem where people were breaking out their own parking lots on the west side of that street. But the overall concern is the width of that street and passage on that street. And that's why we recommended the parking restrictions on the west side of the street and on the curve.
Okay, so the west side is where they were putting in their own parking lots, right?
Correct. Into the woods that were privately owned, and some of it's right of way, but that's been cleaned up last I checked.
You're here to comment on this?
Yes, I am.
Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Ashley France. I live at 161 Richardson Street, where you're saying that we put in our parking spot. And I would like to be the first to say that this was not brought up because there was a matter of spacing or anything like that. This is actually a problem of the neighbor didn't like my partner, and them two had a feud a couple years ago. Well, he had moved in, and he was already told that city easement is 15 feet off of the middle of the street, which is correct. Am I right? What is city easement?
We'll have to check with the
Yeah, it depends.
Okay. We've already gone and talked to them about it, but city easement is 15 feet from the center of the street. Therefore, he measured that and made sure that this parking lot that you're saying is there is actually within city easement. So he can park within 15 feet of city easement and he's fine. The private owner of the land, he's tried to contact them. He's actually tried to contact the owner of the building down here just so we could try to buy land near here. There is actually the same intersection on Renner. If you look to the, no, that right there. Okay. So do you see how there is a corner right here and there's a corner right here? On Renner Street is the same issue. The people do the same exact thing, and it's never became a problem. Never. They have never spoke of anything. This came because the neighbor called the cops because she said that it was an eyesore that we parked across the street. They said that they did a survey, and her girlfriend that used to live there, they no longer live there anymore, by the way. They sold their house and moved out. And we all, I hate to say it, we all, because they're not here, but we all use that side of the street. My neighbor uses it to the right of me, and my neighbor uses it to the left of me. There's not a problem between passing and going, simply because there's only 5 houses on the street. If you want to count the 6th one on the corner between Hayes and Richardson, there's 5 houses on our street. There's hardly anybody going back and forth. If you want to say anything, I know my neighbor's kids fly down the street, but we've already spoken to her about it. There's 5 people on our street, and we all use the side of the street that you're trying to ban parking on. Now, if you would like to widen the street and make it to where it's a reasonable street, like that, or we wanted to try to consider a one-way. A one-way would be a lot more feasible, and you could not have to worry about passing or anything. That was the initial issue. That's what we were told. And then somebody chimed in and said something about the that a fire truck couldn't get through, and the fire truck was supposed to see if he could measure if he could get through or not safely. And I mean, my boyfriend can take his 30-foot semi down the curve. So I'm pretty sure a fire truck can make it through. I don't see a problem. They said they did a vote. The vote was the 2 people that replied. I was home during this whole time. And they never knocked on my door. Neither did they walk on my neighbor's door, and she's home 24/7. And the other neighbors and we all work. Therefore, it's never been a problem. But they probably weren't home when they did this vote. But the 2 people that had to have replied did live 2 houses down from Richardson Street, and therefore they're not here anymore. They're not here to talk. The people that initially brought this up are not even here to discuss it. This became an issue because of a neighbor feud, and they're not here anymore. Therefore, it's starting to come on your bill, and you guys think that it's a problem, and you guys want to foot the bill for all this, putting up signs and all this, and it's not really a problem. I don't see a problem with it. There's maybe 20 cars that go down our road. Like, I mean, the neighbor, her land They park right there on the corner on Cheshire and Renner. On the north, is that the north side? I don't know my directions or whatever, but top right-hand corner, we'll just say from the picture, she has a parking spot right there. She parks there. And therefore, the neighbor right there, he parks there. The neighbor on Richardson Street, she parks across from her street, and she has a driveway. She has a driveway next to her driveway, and she parks across the street. None of us have a problem with that. My boyfriend owns a concrete business. Therefore, he has several vehicles that he's going to have to move in and out. I think he has like, I don't know how many vehicles he has, honestly. I lost count. But we have a land that we do keep it at in Columbus. We have a land in Raymond, and sometimes we have vehicles at our house that he has to go back and forth with jobs. Some of the vehicles sometimes are parked over there rather than him blocking me in and me not being able to get to work at 3:30 in the morning. But the neighbor to the left of me also, they're the ones that took down the woods or whatever. I can't speak on them. Don't know why they did it. But when he moved in that house, I was 16 years old, and I know what it looked like. And there was only grass and brush there. So he didn't actually take down any woods. The neighbors did that. I can't speak upon their behalfs, but they just most recently did that. And yes, they did clean it up. They left a whole bunch of brush and trees and everything there. They did recently clean that up. They don't have a proper driveway, parking space, whatever you want to call it. And the end of their vehicles are always on the road. So I don't know if maybe that's how this became an issue, but I would like to know really how it became an issue and what's your guys' point to spend all this money on signs and everything when I don't really think it's affecting anybody.
Chief, how did this come to our attention?
We did get the complaint about some of the issues with the parking in the right of way and the private property, and then our community service officer also noticed the parking issues and the width, and so that's when we looked into it and looked at the width, we had to clean up the parking. It's right of way and private property was converted into private parking, which we can't do. There's some shale back there. There's an incline right on the edge where those woods were cleared back to some of that shale that's on private property. So there were several issues we looked at there. And then we looked at putting cars on both sides of the road and the width of the road. It becomes problematic. And, some of it is, the day-to-day back and forth traffic. Traffic can manage to get by, but there are also issues with, safety services getting in there and taking up the street and also setting up equipment, especially when you talk about the fire department. That's kind of where the issue was.
So you guys built a street that wasn't big enough for a fire truck?
That street's been there. That might be one of the original streets in Delaware.
Yeah.
So no, we didn't build it, but we're kind of, if you sat through the West Hall Drive, we didn't build that either. We're just trying to fix it. So
yeah, that's also because we
looked at-
have to pay to have the alley repaved also. Even though we pay city taxes, we brought this up to them and they said that we have to pay we all have to pitch in to pave the alleyway right there.
I'm not really prepared to answer that. I can tell you it might be the difference between a public and a private alley.
Yeah.
It might be a matter of, who owns it and whether it's someone's driveway or not. I don't know the answer to that. What I can tell you is we recognize the parking over there is tight and there's limited ability. There's a lot of parking in some of the backyards and I don't know whether it's yours or someone's running a business back there. But
Nobody's running a business.
But we recognize that if we restricted it on both sides, we would probably unfairly be impacting people. So we tried just to restrict it on the west side. The parking on the east side is really not ideal either because it occupies the roadway and the yards. But we understood that people have to park. So we tried to kind of strike a balance with the recommendation.
Okay.
And if I could, let me address from the fire department access. I know this is something we've had some very discussions here. The street is 17 feet in width. which is a very narrow road. Most of the discussion in which we have begun addressing no parking on one side has been streets that are 24 foot in width. Having said that, and we understand, I know it's been city council's wish, as much as possible allow parking at least on one side, and everybody has a right preferably to park in front of their house. But I do need to emphasize that with the 17-foot wide street here, allowing parking on there reduces an 8-foot car access of 9 feet for fire truck to gain access. Having a fire truck gain access to that, while our trucks are 8 foot wide, it does not give us the feasibility, as we discussed before, to begin those operations from that truck, pulling the hose, opening up the compartments, and even getting out of the vehicle. So it does pose well, and the other thing I was going to point out, for a fire lane, for a fire truck to operate, and by the Ohio State Fire Code, a fire lane is required minimum width of 18 feet. So, looking at the 17-foot wide street, it doesn't even meet the requirement of that. So with that, we have discussed and worked and made actually this recommendation to you. And I think it's for the safety of the people that live on that street as well.
Is there sufficient parking on the east side of the street?
Let's see if I can get street. There's a street. Yeah, here we go.
I can say that the driveways are anywhere from, our neighbors have to park their cars horizontally, let's say parallel with the street. This is what I was talking about, our neighbors. That's not really feasible. They've put a lot of things in front of their, this little, I don't know what this is. They have just a bunch of random rocks, okay? And the tail ends of their cars are constantly sticking out. I don't really think that there's a lot of good parking on this. Honestly, I think that the way that this discussion is going, I think that this road has been there for so many years that it needs to be updated. With it being 17 feet wide, that's hardly enough for one vehicle to safely drive down, let alone two. And if you wanted to get, there's no way that you could get a fire truck through there safely and try to get anything out of it. It sounds to me that this whole entire road needs updated.
But you're saying, Chief, there was a parking on one side, you could get the truck through.
We would manage.
You can hardly get around that
how tight
corner.
it is at this point in time.
Yeah.
It just looks like it was really difficult.
The
I guess
corner,
she made, the point she made was these cars here are not
Yeah.
probably legally parked or ideally parked, and that's kind of what we recognize when you look how tight this is.
Yeah.
This is we
And then
understand they need places to park, but this stuff here was not and then you can see this might have been pre-cleanup, but
Yeah.
you can see someone had cut down
Yeah.
and see what they did. And now you can see the drop off back there, which I referred to, but there were a lot of vehicles in here, and when they are sticking out onto the roadway or when people are parking parallel here, it makes it tight, but we understand that we tried to strike the balance there and kind of understand that part of it and just restrict it on the one side.
And the parking on that side where it cleared out, that was part of the right of way. See, in private property they cut into, right?
It's right away right there on someone else's frontage. Someone owns that lot
Yeah,
behind
sure,
it.
sure. Yeah, so
It's like the right of way in front of your home,
rest of parking on right of way, which
in front of someone else.
that's a big
But it is right-
wooded acre.
property.
Okay, it's the giant woods.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the installation of no parking signs on Richardson from Hayes to Cheshire Street. Sorry, to the alley between Richardson and Cheshire for safety purposes.
So Chief, based on the parameters of what Lisa just said, would that completely eliminate parking on the west side of that street, or would there be areas where you could park?
That would eliminate it from here down to here, all on the west side.
I can guarantee you that's going to cause more parking issues. Because not only me, my neighbors, and the neighbors beside me, it's just not feasible. It's not.
I gotta tell you, I'm puzzled by this because if you look at that road, I don't know where they're gonna park.
And also the corner is so sharp. Like the way that the corner is set up, the neighbor's mailbox just got taken out the other day. I don't know, they made a police report about that. Has anybody talked about that? How the corner is so sharp that the mailbox got taken out. We don't even keep a mailbox on ours because ours gets taken out so much.
We need to pursue.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion. I second the motion. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I realize it's a problem. This isn't gonna make it better necessarily, but we've got to be concerned with safety. So that's our number one priority.
Okay, so how do I go about trying to make it a one-way or trying to widen the road?
Well, that's something you're gonna have to propose to the public works people, and they'll have to make decisions. I mean, that's a budgetary concern to try and, the one-way street's not as big a deal, but that's something our traffic engineers have to make a decision on.
We could bring that back to our parking and safety agenda and start fresh on that concept and just go through the process.
I mean, something needs to be done. Like you guys said, it's an old street. There's not a lot of movement. It's a sharp curve. And something needs to be done other than no parking. Like that just, I feel like kind of is scooting it off to the side and saying, you know what, we're just getting it done, but we can get to it
We've got to
later.
make a decision based on safety. So we've made a decision regarding the parking.
Okay,
realize
I understand
we're happy
that.
with But it's the best decision we can make under the circumstances. But we can still, with our engineering department, take a look at the idea of making that a one-way street.
Yep, the best way to start would be send in a petition, drop it off, send it by email.
Okay.
Helpful to all residents along that entire road.
Yeah.
East the curve, around the curve, all the way back down. All signed it saying,
Okay.
we want it one way, this way or that way.
When do you
Gives us a
guys do
starting point.
these?
I'm sorry?
When do you guys do these? Do you send them in the mail or do you guys?
You can send them to my attention.
Okay.
Or the police chief's attention. I'll
Okay.
put my card.
I
And,
can-
That's the best way to start that process.
Okay.
I just want to pose a question though. If it was converted to one way, would that really change the impact of still restricting parking on one side based on the width?
No,
I
it's still-
still think you're going to have parking
Everyone's facing the
restrictions.
other
So,
way.
yeah, so we'll have to keep that in mind also, that the parking restriction would have to stay in place. That
I understand that, but what I'm saying is,
Ma'am, if you want to bring that up in the engineering department, you can contact Mr. Freno and bring that up. We need to call. Number one, item number 6, no parking signage on the south side of Diverson Way, on the north and south side of Diverson Way from Hope Road to Blakemore Drive.
This is an issue that we received regarding congestion on Diverston Road at South Help Road, and primarily what the concern is, I'm going to use the pointer because I can. This house right here is Rockport's model home, and they're fairly active, and there's a lot of parking that occurs in here on both sides of the road. And the concern was traffic coming around Diverston is backing up, but also traffic turning off South Houck onto Diverston is running right into a stack of traffic from cars parked on both sides. So the proposal or the recommendation that's been made is to restrict parking essentially from a point 75 feet from the sidewalk. So it would take it back probably to about the driveway of the model home, so right about here. And that would just allow some queuing space and some reactionary space in there. I'm not sure, anyone here from Rockport? We did send out notices to this neighborhood, and I did talk to Rockport twice, so they were either going to send me an email or be here, but I didn't get either. But I know they're a little concerned about this because that's where, especially the south side, is where their clients park to check out their model home. They did advise me that they're in the process, probably a 6 to 8 month process of moving out of that house and vacating that property, which might actually mitigate the issue. So they're not here to answer that. Our recommendation is that we do the restriction in that area, 75 feet from the sidewalk to essentially to the driveway of the model home.
And there were notices sent out, no one responded.
We sent out notices to all these houses here and the corner houses. And I did talk to the office manager, Emily Heber, who had concerns with it. And then also one of the managing partners, and I forget his name, but he called me last week, and he had my email. I asked him just to send me email, so if he couldn't be here, I could read it in. But his concern was just the parking, and hopefully he would be okay with eliminating parking. I believe he said just eliminate the north side, but if they left the south side, that would allow their customers parking.
So you do recommend this?
Yes.
And Chief Donahue does as well?
I'm in a precarious situation here. No, and why I say that is I live 7 houses from that intersection. So I have to be very careful in what I say because I'm here as your fire chief, but also have an interest in this. So I'll leave that to the people here and the others on the DS to comment.
So I live in the neighborhood and I see the need for it. My concern is though that we're going to move it down Diverson to the curve where it would almost be
Exact same problem.
another problem. I don't know. What do you?
If they can't park in front of that model, are they going to move down closer to your house, and then stone that curb and have the same problem?
And that curb has been a problem. I live right there in the curb. And actually we've had 2 trees hit right there and mailbox taken out. One of the solutions that was posed, and Chief Pijanowski can correct me if I'm wrong, was the possibility of having and utilizing their driveway, because their driveway is not being used for parking. It's strictly being used as a walk-up. But I believe that was posed, and the answer was no. They were worried about oil spots.
Yeah, I think they want to control that. I think given that they're going to be vacating that next year, and if we're worried about pushing traffic down to that curve, if we just did it on the north side, quite frankly, there's actually a fire hydrant right in here, so that's about what you can get in there. But if that might be the compromise there, is just ban it on the north side up to that driveway and let them continue parking on the south side. But I know we hate restricting parking, so I'm trying to find a way there.
Yeah, some of these things just seem like it's a no-win.
Mhm.
You do something else.
I don't know, can you just table it until after they move out and after they, how critical is it to exit the property or?
One of the things we're just discussing too is I agree, the real, one of the concerns that at least the complaint was, is you come through there and if you have parking on both sides and you're worried about the pedestrian path crosswalk, which we're familiar with that conflict, plus trying to see traffic coming along Houck Road, person has just too many things to worry about. So I agree that kind of the compromise, if maybe we limited parking on the north side from that driveway towards the crosswalk to make that safer, so vehicles can clearly see the pedestrians. On the south side, what we don't see is a no parking zone 2 sign. We can post the south side of the statutory 30 feet from the crosswalk or stop bar. So effectively back, probably past that light pole, we can make sure no one parks too close to the intersection there either. So when someone comes in, you're not going to have parking on both sides, and you're not going to be faced with a conflict right away. So it's really kind of clearing the intersection out a little bit and just restricting it on the north side and letting that longer part of the south side straightaway continue to be parking.
So that makes sense.
Yep.
As an interim condition.
So
Give everything you just said.
so that would change.
Really, we're just eliminating parking from the driveway west to Houck Road on the north side of the road.
But we're still leaving alone
That would be eliminated right where the pointer is.
So we would be, I'll use this because it's a little easier to see, but we'll eliminate this and leave this and then post the statutory signage to keep traffic back from the corner.
Right.
That cleans it up a little bit.
So we can already
so we're only doing north side.
Correct. All we
Okay.
need is the motion to limit the north side.
Okay,
They never
so
do any of the part.
I move to, let's see, approve a no parking sign on the north side of Diverson Way from Hauk to Blakemore.
Out to the first driveway,
From Hauk to the first driveway.
right there.
West edge,
On
west edge
Blakemore.
of the first driveway.
West edge of the first driveway on Diverson,
On
not
Diverson.
Blakemore.
There-
Diverson. Sorry, I'm confused. North-south,
That's correct.
Diverson, Blakemore.
You got her now?
I don't know, did I get that right?
Yeah,
I think you
Okay.
said-
North side of
That's
Diverson
correct.
Way to the first driveway.
Okay,
Second.
I just said a bunch of words and some of them must have been right.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hopefully this will be a little easier. Discussion of the dynamic speed feedback sign report.
I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So, obviously, everybody's aware that we did the 12-month pilot program. We bought the signs last year and we put them up on 12 various streets. And those streets were determined based on the stealth speed that we collected over the past years on 5 mile per hour, greater than 5 miles per hour. So we did a before, during, and after study to determine, what the effects of these signs had on the streets. And we did find, minimal reduction in the 85th percentile, but we saw a noticeable reduction in the average speed. Overall, average of the 85th percentile while the signs were in place was 3.2 mile per hour, the average, and a 1.8 with the 85th percentile. After the signs were taken down, we noticed that speeds tended to creep back up. So it's evident that the signs need to be permanent in order to have an effect. Also, we found that studies have shown that you need periodic enforcement while the signs are in place to keep those effective and everything. We did find some positive feedback from the residents. A lot were very, impressed with the devices. It kind of, what would you say, Bill, it appeased them. A lot of them offered to purchase the signs themselves, and we install them, so they were very, very impressed with that. Some other studies that we've come across too, and it's kind of from a different perspective of things. I'm sure we're all aware when you're driving to and from work, to and from school, you kind of get this autopilot. So you're kind of not paying attention to your surroundings. You get to the place, you don't even know how you got there. I know it happens to me all the time on the way home. So is what these signs have shown to do is they change the way your brain thinks, and it kind of makes you alert again to, pay attention to your surroundings. So overall, it's a low cost traffic calming measure that I think that we could consider in certain, locations based on, and we did come up with a list of possible, if we did want to include this in the traffic calming. Our thoughts were if we were going to recommend these to go in, we'd look at the 85th percentile. It would have to be greater than 5 miles per hour, no matter what, to be able to install these. The speed or the streets would have to be classified as a local neighborhood collector roadway, obviously no cul-de-sacs. Certain streets such as school zones could be considered if they had a speeding problem, and we would only have those signs activated in those school zones during the school zone flasher times. Another thing, there'd be one set of speed signs per street. I know it had been mentioned earlier about everybody uses this as like a scoring system. So we were thinking there's ways to program the signs where if you're over 15 miles per hour over the speed limit, it would just go blank. You're not going to see things. So nobody's seeing, okay, you're 50 miles per hour, you're 60 miles per hour. So there's ways around that kind of thing. We also noticed that if the speed limit would flash if you're over 25 miles per hour. Well, we all know there's that threshold from up to 30 miles per hour, so we wouldn't have it start flashing the speed till after 30 miles per hour. So different things we've kind of learned through the pilot program. What else here? And then we could potentially reevaluate the streets that if they were determined to be installed permanently, reevaluate the need, the location, to see if they're still needed and have the potential to relocate them or remove them altogether. The biggest question is if we do use this as a traffic calming measure, the funding, where it comes from to fund these. I know, Bill, you had looked at our list of streets, and I mean, there is quite a few on that list. I don't know how many you counted that.
It's probably between 30 and 40 streets that are just at that threshold that arguing, someone could say, hey, the 85th percentile speed is 31 miles per hour, so we want flashing signs on our street. So there are a lot of streets that it does qualify, but I guess for all the streets around Delaware, majority of 20 miles per hour, we could say it's only 30 streets. One thing we just want to be caution about on all of these applications, RFBs, things like that, is the reason why they work is because we put them in limited areas, and as Jessica talked about, there's a lot of reporting about the psychology of why these things work. And they work because they disrupt your normal mental, I think there's brainwave stuff.
Yeah.
But they disrupt your normal pattern where all of a sudden something's different in front of you because a bright LED beacon started flashing at you, or in this case, your speed started flashing at you. So it disrupts your pattern, makes you more cognitively aware of your surroundings. You start gathering input, like I better slow down. There's a crosswalk here, my speed's being broadcast at 33 miles per hour, I better slow down. So they do work well on the cognitive function, how you operate. In terms of just a neighborhood, it's almost like having an electronic big brother out there. You know, people want us to do something about speeders, even though we don't really classify these as a speeding issue. But they have these signs there, and people think, yeah, now if someone goes fast, that speed sign's going to start flashing it, and they're going to know it. So it kind of appeases people to say, hey, we got something on neighborhood to, you know, let everybody know you're speeding if you're coming through. So there's a psychological value to them. So as Jessica said, there's 6,200
for a pair.
Right now.
So I mean, compared to bump outs or other measures to, you know, deter speeding, I mean, it's very low cost. So maintenance aspect, you do have they are solar powered, so you do have a battery that has to be replaced every 3 to 5 years. You're talking a couple $100s. There are components that could go bad, whether it be the solar panel or LED board. You know, there are costs to those, just like there are with any traffic infrastructure out there. So those are all things to keep in mind, but it is a low cost.
So after the end of the pilot, they do exactly as we anticipated a year ago. You can't stop, you can't make people go 25 miles per hour. You just can't do it. But you make people more aware of their behavior. And that's what we've validated through this pilot is that, yeah, clearly when the signs were in place, people were hitting the brake pedal. They weren't going down 25, but they were, you know, they're going down to, you know, a couple miles per hour, they're slowing down, became aware. So there's some merit to it. You know, if we did 20 street signs, it's a $100,000 cost right there that's competing with everything else we have. That's why the recommendations we made, we're seeking a little bit of input because we don't want to put a recommendation out there, and then suddenly you're faced with 10 neighborhoods coming in demanding speed signs now, and we don't have $6,200 a pair just to put these out.
Like you'd said about something before, if you start using them everywhere, they start to lose their value.
Right. Right.
Can we get like one and move it like we've been doing?
Yeah, and we've been continuing to like pilot it on other streets too since we've been done with the pilot program, and we can continue to do that. That's no problem at all. And we can go off our south speed, you know, and put them at the various locations.
I have a question. Was Carson Farms, the street listed here, Carson Farms Boulevard, or was it Cobblestone?
Carson Farms Boulevard. Now, we have placed it on Cobblestone after our pilot project. It has been on Cobblestone.
Okay.
So the answer is yes, we could physically add them. Maybe we add a couple more sets of them and continually, like Chief moves the speed wagon around, we could move these things around and use them more proactively in neighborhoods to help control speeds. If a neighborhood wanted to purchase initially a set of them, HOA, we could allow that, then we just have the repair costs. So there's things we could do, but we just wanted to get a little bit of feedback of how to move forward. I think there's some value, at least psychologically, cognitively, in them. We're not going to see driving habits change drastically, but if people in the neighborhood believe in them, then it's a step in the right direction. I don't think they're that different than we put these, like the lines we put on the pavement and like the line around the Nottingham Park. It still works. People are staying within the bounds now, or before they drifted all the way across the road to make the turn. So again, it's nothing but lines in the pavement, but cognitively people think, I got to be more aware here. And I think the signs will do the same thing. So we could budget more in the budget, try to get a couple more pairs of them and use it more as a program annually. It's up to the community, but if we wanted to tell us if the HOA wanted to buy a pair, we could adjust the requirements that if it's a really severe speeding problem, we put them in, but if it's that in-between zone, we can say, well, if you want to purchase repair through the homeowner association, we'll maintain them once you purchase them. There's different things we can do.
I like that idea of, we'll put it in if there's a certain degree of a problem, but homeowners associations probably would purchase a lot of them, I think.
Okay.
And then as we would maintain them, but as a replacement, I guess 10 years, 15 years down the way, I guess we could reevaluate whether another set would need to be purchased at that time. So
By that point, there'll probably be something else.
something new and better, yeah.
I think your recommendations in here make sense as a guideline. Again, my concern is if we don't overdo this to the point where they're
Exactly.
even if they're buying them, again, we get enough of them. It's not fantastic.
So we could develop a policy, it could be internal with part of our traffic calming, but we could bring it to full council, or we could just internally move this policy forward.
I'm comfortable with that,
Yeah, I
just
do.
moving it forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate all your work on this. This is a lot.
Thanks, Jessica. Really headed it up and did a great job.
Thank you.
Item 8, discussion and consideration of recommendations from the Downtown Parking Advocacy Committee Enforcement Work Group as listed. Chief.
Yes, this has been on this agenda for quite some time now, and just through the discussions, it's obvious there's a lack of consensus on this. And there's also a lot of balls in the air right now, so we're working on some meter projects, a couple different meter projects. So at this point, my recommendation is going to be we table this until we can at least finalize what we're doing with our meters and then move forward and maybe try and form a little more consensus downtown with what we do with parking.
Thanks for coming, Susie.
I do want to go on record that I warned her.
Are you all comfortable with tabling?
That's right. Do I need to make a motion to table that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Make a motion, we table the discussion regarding downtown parking, the advocacy committee enforcement work group. Do we need to put a date on that or a time, just table talk?
I'd say indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
Because we're, okay.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Statement. Staff comments.
One quick update. We've been watching obviously the downtown parking scene, but one thing we've noticed is since the county has moved out of the courthouse facility and moved a lot of their offices and personnel across the street, the parking at the meters on the north side of Central between Sandusky and Franklin. So there's meters on both sides of Central. The ones that are on the boundary with the courthouse, those are very infrequently used anymore, and they're 3-hour meters. So we are going to move forward and have the city manager authorize us to convert those over to 10-hour meters so we can issue a few more permits or have more people parking in those spaces and actually utilizing them and freeing up some of the other spaces inside downtown.
Cool.
That's all I have.
And we've said a lot already.
Anybody else? Committee comments?
Well, the only one I have, and then again, this, since we're talking about speeding stuff tonight, it's increasingly worse on Houck Road that, is it 35 there? Or is it
35, right.
I mean, it's just, I don't know what to do. We'll move that thing there at some point. I think we had
one there for a while, yeah.
I think we're getting our trailer out there, or we just took it in. I can't remember.
I know it is one of the higher ones. It's usually at least 6 miles per hour over,
Yeah,
so it's not the 5 mile per hour. It's higher.
And I noticed that people seem to be walking more between Kroger's and then, across the subdivision with groceries and stuff. And they just have just a death trap. Like,
We are
nothing
looking,
else.
we're looking at Houck Road, South and North Houck Road for that reason. When we built Houck Road, we built it wide enough for turn lanes, not knowing what's going to develop where. So we built it. But now that we know what's there, we don't need all that big wide pavement. And that's what makes it go fast. It's wide, people feel secure going fast. We're actually talking about a restriping plan that may narrow the road up the field of the road, eliminate the big island in the middle and have more of the side by side. We may add bike lanes to the edge to make it even feel more narrow. We're looking at ways that use striping to change the feel of the road. Have the turns where you need to have the turns, not have them everywhere. If it's like, especially North Houck Road, you really don't have to have a designated turn lane. There's not so much traffic that you can't just wait, take a left turn. It slows people down a little bit. So we're tuned into this, and we have the same complaints north and south Hawk Road. And we think there's some possibilities of doing some striping type things to slow things down. We get a lot of complaints about it. And our thought was, do we need to go to the public somewhat with that too and get some public feedback on those concepts as well?
Great. Go ahead.
Just a couple comments about Hull. I didn't want to come off as insensitive to any of the concerns, and it's certainly not for my own convenience. But I'm just really worried that making some changes there will transfer the problem somewhere else. So I just want to make that concern known, that a lot of people that come from our neighborhood, where I live, the Heatherton neighborhood, even Lantern Chase, use that as a primary way. And I don't think that a lot of those people are going to find a new way. I'm just worried they're going to continue. So we're going to go through all of this and still have a problem.
You're saying you're going to go out the stopway, turn left, and then turn left on Hall again. You're still going to use the same road.
And the only reason I'm saying that is because my own ignorance lacks another solution. I mean, just knowing the local roads, I don't know them well enough that another solution pops right into my head. I'm like, I don't know where else to go. Now I know because you told me go to 42, but that doesn't feel as intuitive as going just down Hull. And so I'm worried that there's more like me that haven't sat in a meeting like this, who aren't going to be thinking, the poor people on Hull Drive and their dogs and cats, they're just going to either go up and go right around that barrier.
And that's why we need to measure, and that's why I was really pleased that U.S. Properties did finally show up, and we had a feeling that they would when we said we'll do Plan B. So I just talked to Nathan, we're going to reach out to him tomorrow and give him the dates and times to come in. But we're glad they're here, because doing changes in their driveway is the least expensive way to accomplish that goal of measuring. And I agree, the reason we want to pilot, we want to measure the effectiveness of it before we do anything permanent, because if it plays out that everyone just goes to 23 and turns left, then we haven't really accomplished anything other than made a higher risk move for everybody. Our hopes are, of the 1,300 vehicles a day that make that left turn, maybe we can get 600 or 700 to stay on the highway and go somewhere else. And then we have accomplished something, but we've got to be able to measure it. And we can actually do that and bring that back and say, here's our measured results. And we feel this is the direction we should be going.
That makes sense, making a non-permanent change and kind of seeing what happens.
Because I hate to do nothing after all these years of people, I mean, you're right, we don't know what people can do, it might make it worse, but if it does, we can undo it. But I hate to just do nothing after all this work these people put in and all the years of hearing it. And it's clearly an issue, so I'm hoping that we can, maybe with the input of the property owners now, maybe we can go up with something that's not quite as drastic as eliminating the turn. Maybe we just don't make that an outbound or whatever.
Not to drag this on and over, but I keep running over my head. I mean, how do you get to her house from, from Hall? I mean, you say going 42, so where do you suggest that she goes from there?
A lot of people jump off at 42 London Road and use Pittsburgh Drive. That's a pretty common cut through route.
Or Bell Avenue to Liberty Road.
Yeah.
For some reason I had in my head, London Road to Curtis and cutting back and just adding it to. You're there. So I'll just run
270, take 270. Take a little longer. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned at 7:39. Thank you, everybody. I got to work with you now.